And thank you for joining us on the CBS 6 Facebook page to bring your questions to the Richmond mayoral candidate, Alexsis Rodgers, who has come back after our interview on the news at 7. Candace is standing by to convey those questions because otherwise it'll just be me talking again, and I've been talking all day. So people say, stop talking, Bill. So in just a minute, we'll get a couple of questions or so from Candace. So please send your questions in and we'll try to ask the candidate immediately. So welcome back. Thanks for coming back.
Of course.
We were talking a little earlier about bringing Richmond back in the pandemic, and we talked about the economic fallout and some of the medical necessities in terms of testing. How would you bring businesses back? And by that, I mean there are a number of businesses who, in the wake of the parallel disruption from the unrest and some of the chaos after some of the protests, that there's some businesses that are still closed that are saying, you know, I'm leery of moving back onto Broad Street because of the damage that was sustained by some vandalism. So what would you do to instill confidence in the business community, either starting with COVID relief, but more importantly, just to bring back the confidence of that you can do business and do it well in Richmond?
Well, even before this summer's, crises, we've had a difficulty working with City Hall if you're a small business. Whether you are a restaurant owner or just trying to build a home or expand your business in the city of Richmond, getting a permit has been really difficult. Paying your taxes has been difficult. And so to me, not only do we need to make sure that we are protecting public safety and making sure that we are getting our hands around the virus so that people can gather safely, but we have to make sure that essential services at City Hall are working efficiently as well, so that businesses aren't having a nightmare every time they're trying to pay their taxes or get a permit.
And do you feel that the businesses are being short-sighted, those that would say, hey, I'm leery, or you're just saying that things need to change at City Hall before businesses might be confident right now in coming back? And we have, to your point about the permits, we have heard from contractors, and I personally could tell you about a neighbor who said it took 3 months, almost 3 months, to get just a modest renovation permit done. The mayor yesterday sat where you are and said that he recognizes that there are delays in that department, but that he's got plans to expedite things and speed things up there. What would you tell a business right now, who's an existing business who's leery of reopening?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest, it's tough running a small business any day of the week. I remember when I was at VCU, I was helping manage a coffee shop and looking at that P&L every day and saying, oh, if we don't get a lunch rush tomorrow from VCU, it could be tough. So any day of the week, it's hard. In these crises, it's harder. I think what we've had, unfortunately, in City Hall is not a leader that's focused on supporting small businesses. The mayor says he's been working on the permitting issue. I don't think it takes 4 years to solve whatever's happening in room 110. So to me, that's got to be a priority from day one to fix the permitting office. It impacts so many of Richmonders' lives, including our small businesses. So, I don't blame restaurant owners or small businesses who are thinking, it's tough, should I reopen? It costs me a little bit less to stay closed. Maybe I can wait this crisis out. But I want to make sure that they know that they have full confidence and support from me as mayor to help them get back up and running.
Do you have confidence in the new police chief?
I don't. And the reason why is because there wasn't a public and transparent process in the search. So none of us had the opportunity to vet the police chief as a part of his selection, like we did for, the first Chief Smith. And, that was really disappointing. I think a bad position that Mayor Stoney has put Chief Smith in, because now all of us are thinking, can we trust you? Can we not? We've not had an opportunity to really get to know your perspectives as a part of the selection process.
So do you see a large or a significant segment of the Richmond population that is currently alienated from the police department, that either mistrusts police or just doesn't feel that police will be there for them when they need them?
Absolutely. I mean, we know, looking at our history and today, that there are so many people in our community that have not only been left out of our government, but have been targeted and attacked and harassed. and that the justice system has not been fair for those communities, specifically Black and brown people, queer folks in our community, people who are in poverty, working class people. So, to me, we've got to make sure that we are intentionally finding ways to build that trust, and not having a transparent search process is not a way to do it. Not being bold and saying, you know what, we need to ban tear gassing, as medical providers have told us it's not a good practice for our community. Richmond's not a war zone, so we need to make sure that we are investing in the strategies that keep us safe as a community, and not over-policing folks that are already marginalized.
All right, let's check in with Candace and see what we have so far.
Well, while you're on the topic of policing, we do want to know, what is your, how do you visualize policing in the city of Richmond if you were to be elected mayor?
So I think that we need to be reducing the scale and scope of policing. So, we're only sending law enforcement officers into situations they're prepared for. And in conversations I've had with law enforcement officers, they came to the city to solve crimes, to solve murders, to stop burglaries and hard crime in the city. They didn't come here to deal with issues of mental health crisis, because frankly, that's not what Academy taught them to do. So we need to be creative and also innovative and investing in the social services and systems that do keep our community safe. There are models across the country that are clear examples for Richmond to follow. But the thing is, this administration has not even made it a priority until election year. And I think Richmond is smarter to know that this is politics. This is not a real effort from the mayor's administration to tackle this issue in a meaningful way.
And would numbers not help? For example, right now we seem to be having a spasm of violence in Richmond. I've sat here night after night in the last couple of months, and I think we had 23 shootings in 28 days. Is that something else? Is that the pandemic? Is it not? What's going on there, and how would what you've proposed handle that?
Well, I think what is really sad about some of these instances is that we know that we need the community to speak up and share information in these instances to help solve the crimes. And if folks don't have trust in the police department, we're not going to be able to solve these crimes. So, when we're talking about the public health emergency, which is gun violence in our communities, we need to be bringing together social workers, pastors, neighbors, community leaders to figure out how we can actually create a plan that keeps us safe in the city of Richmond. I don't think it always means sending more police into neighborhoods. I think that there are other ways that we can, keep each other safe, neighbors checking on neighbors. And I think, we have to be investing in those kind of community solutions.
We also have a question from Patricia Baldwin. She asked this earlier today. What is your plan to help the homeless and low-income families in Richmond?
In my career, I've always been focused on lifting up marginalized folks, including unhoused populations that, maybe didn't have access to health care or a good living environment. So to me, we need to be investing in coordinating care from our social services department with nonprofit community leaders that are going to help us make sure that people not only get rehoused, but also into whatever other services or skills that they might need to be successful, whether that's substance abuse or mental health services or jobs and skills, credentialing skills for workforce development. So to me, we've got to make sure that we are, number one, treating every person in our city as a dignified human being, and making sure that we are not criminalizing poverty, which often if you are walking down the street, you see someone on a park bench, you might call the police. That person might get picked up for a crime that was not necessary. So let's make sure that we are investing in the social services to get people rehoused safely.
And that sounds like a lot of personnel, a lot of staff, a lot of cost. Mm-hmm. Surely it's been thought of before that if we could just divert people into where they need the help the most, whether it's mental health, whether it's like a specific housing crisis, or being picked up for something that led to sort of a chain of events. Are the resources there? I mean, could you take a budgetary look and say, yes, this is how I would, maybe reshuffle this a little bit? Because it sounds like you need a lot of people, a lot of trained personnel to get that done.
Well, there's a great model in Oregon, Bill, called the Cahoots program, where if someone calls into the 911, they actually dispatch, working with their crisis center, a proper response, a trauma-informed response. And so, sometimes I think that there are creative solutions working with community partners, but at the end of the day, city budget is a set of priorities and a set of values. And so to me, making sure that everyone has access to a safe place to lay their head at night, making sure that people have access to health care, those have to be priorities for our community, and they will be reflected in my budget.
So we have a lot of people watching right now, but they're not asking many questions. So I'll use this as an opportunity. If you're watching and you hear Alexis talking and you have some questions that come up, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm watching and I'll make sure she addresses those questions. This is your opportunity to have them answered. In the meantime, Alexis, what's your plan to address Richmond's public housing issues and concerns? Here at CBS 6, we get lots of calls all the time from people who have issues with our RHA or, and they need help. And that's just a big concern we know in the city of Richmond.
So, just this past weekend, I was in Whitcomb, introducing myself to some neighbors out there, and they were very excited to hear me, to see me in the community and to share some of their concerns. Candace, so I appreciate you sharing that. We have to make sure that whether you are living in public housing, on Monument Avenue, on South Side, or anywhere in the city, that you are treated with dignity and respect. And unfortunately, a lot of our tenants in RHA housing have not been given that courtesy. For me, we want to make sure that in our administration that we have resident-driven plans for how we redevelop RHA and how we, I think, create the future for public housing. Residents have made it very clear. They want a brick and mortar replacement for public housing that's one-to-one, because unfortunately, in years and administrations past, they've been told one thing and then seen something else happen. And for your home, your safety net to be disrupted in that way is not something that anyone would want in our community. So
when you say disrupted, you mean like say, hey, let's just tear these buildings down,
exactly.
And then what? Where do we put
exactly.
one-to-one all these families in these various from these units? Where do we put them?
So I think that we have to create a resident-driven plan for that to make sure that when these 80-year-old public housing units are torn down, that someone actually has a place to go. Because vouchers don't necessarily work for everyone. And, a story, an experience that someone shared with me the other day was, say you do get a voucher, you're in another neighborhood and you're supposed to be feeling safer, but you don't actually know your neighbors or your community anymore. That, friend that used to check on your kid when you had to leave early to get on the bus, or maybe you were a little bit late coming back from work, that security has all been disrupted. So when we think about how we re-envision and create the new model for public housing, we have to do it with residents' experiences at the forefront, or else we'll be doing the most well-intentioned thing and still end up underserving our community.
Which is what was done 80 years ago when all said, hey, let's put them all off in this, put these units all in this island by itself, so cut off really from the lifeblood of the city. And it also sounds like there are a lot of moving parts. Obviously, the federal authorities are involved, Section 8 housing, and it's a devilishly tough problem because of all these different agencies that are involved. How many years would it take to, say, end up like a Charleston? I mean, Charleston has been credited, the mayor was there for 40 years, Joe Riley. I mean, it takes some time to be around. You have to be around for a long time to get stuff done, apparently. But, I mean, what kind of vision would it take, and how long should we expect to say goodbye to the courts, per se, as they stand now?
I don't know that I'll have 40 years ever in any role, but for the 4 years of my administration, I'll certainly be working every day to make sure that we are making progress on this issue. And what I've definitely seen is that the federal administration, our local oversight, all of that can not necessarily work all together. I do believe that the Office of Community Wealth Building has been a good resource for a lot of our RHA tenants and residents, connecting them to good employment opportunities, getting them the education or credentialing they might need to get into a better career field. And those services, I think, are vital for the city to continue to support and create a little more funding for. I think the Community Wealth Building Office is doing a lot with only a little bit. If we could throw a couple more million towards that, assess our budget like we were discussing earlier, I think we'd see a lot of good come out of that investment.
All right.
Yes, we have a question from Princess Blanding. She's asking, what you would do to build strong trust and relationships with people who live in the community, to address their needs and also to stay connected after you're elected mayor?
You know, I think the number one issue that elected officials face is they get elected and they expect the community to just trust that they're going to do what they said they would do. You know, as an organizer, as a policy leader, I've never had that luxury of running away from the community and just asking them to trust me that I'm doing my job. I've got to stay present. And so as mayor, I'm going to take that same mindset to the role, where I'll still be present. I'll still be popping up at the neighborhood association meetings or at different events around town to have a pulse of what's actually going on in the community. You know, it's not enough for me to just say, hey, I invite you to come meet with me at City Hall. I want to be seen in all of our neighborhoods, really listening to residents and building that trust that Princess is asking about, because to me, that's how you really are able to have the foundation that you need to be successful in governing and putting forward policy that is going to have buy-in from the community. When we're talking about economic development or new housing initiatives, you know, you name it, public education, you've got to have the community support in that. And if you've been sitting at 9th and Main and just waiting for the opportunity to roll out your good policy idea with no public input and no community relationships, you're not going to be successful. I understand that the people are where we're going to have political power and the ability to govern, and that's why I'll always continue to invest in those relationships.
On your website, you talk about eliminating the inequities in the education system, public education. How do you do that? Mayor Stoney has talked about 3 fully renovated, practically brand new schools on his watch these last four years, and a 4th in the offing. What's the key to eliminating these inequities? That you're in a school that's basically cut off or set off in a community, and it doesn't seem to be performing as well as the school on the other side of town, or that seems to have more funding, or more what? There's something that's making a big difference. Where do you start to chip away at those inequities?
So, you know, I'm a product of public education as well, and to this day, teachers are investing in me and giving back to me, you know, long since I've been in any of their classrooms, right? And so as mayor, I want to make sure that I'm having the backs of the teachers that are going that extra mile for students and families every single day, checking on their students, even though it's after hours or, you know, not in their normal responsibilities. And in order to have that support for teachers, we've got to be looking at retention metrics. And unfortunately, we know we're losing teachers to other school systems, to other career fields because it's gotten too hard or too difficult. But I don't think that Richmond Public School System and the mayor's office have worked together enough to actually look at those numbers and see, you know, demographic data, you know, why are we losing teachers? How can we keep those quality educators in the classroom? Because we know, especially having teachers of color to educate our young people in the city of Richmond is the most effective way that we're actually having culturally competent education and supporting our young people's growth and development. You know, and also we've got to tackle the school to prison pipeline. And that's why I think it's really important that as we are investing in our schools, we're also investing counselors and nurses and trauma-informed practitioners in our classrooms, because teachers can't be mom, teacher, social worker, and all of these other roles and keep order in the classroom. So, you know, I don't think that we necessarily need to have resource officers or police officers in all of our classrooms, but we do need trained adults that can help de-escalate situations and keep order in the classroom, and we can't put all of that burden on our teachers. So part of the addressing those inequities also is having more adults in the building that can help keep order in the classroom.
And that's not just a funding issue. When you talk about retention, obviously the first thing would be like a bonus or at least higher pay rate, because that obviously, we always hear about how teachers are paid a certain level in the city and the county seem to be able to manage a little bit more. So again, it comes back to the sort of budgetary issue. And of course, that's the school issue, but the city gives the money to the schools. Do you think Jason Cameras is doing a good job?
You know, I think that the culture of advocacy that we've seen from students and teachers and families has pushed the administration and certainly the superintendent to new heights. And that is, I think, those are the heroes in our community. The fact that, you know, moms are showing up to the school board meetings and saying, this is what my young person needs to be successful. You know, I think that unfortunately, we've seen in the city of Richmond sometimes a kind of backlash on election years and the mandate or the referendum on the superintendent. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep some consistency and leadership with RPS while we're going through this challenging times. But we also have to have more accountability and transparency. And I don't think that the administration has always been very clear with the school board about their direction or their intents. And I don't think that they've been as collaborative as one should be if you really want to serve the interests of our young people. So, I look forward to partnering with Mr. Cambris on making sure that we are fully investing in RPS, doing as much as we can as an administration to support the school board and our teachers in that effort.
And get that graduation rate back up.
Exactly.
Or up, I should say. Candace?
Well, following the death of George Floyd, there were a number of protests in the city of Richmond, protesters asking for a number of things. It led to the Confederate monuments being removed, some of them being removed from Monument Avenue. So a question that we've asked all the candidates is what would they like to see happen with that stretch of area, Monument Avenue? What do you visualize?
We touched on that before at 7, but
yeah, so I think that Richmond is an incredibly creative city. We have so many artists who have been investing in Richmond for a long time. I'd want to bring together the artist community, our historians, neighbors to say, what should Monument Avenue look like? What is the story that we want to tell in 2020 about who we are as Richmond? And I don't think that the Confederate monuments, and we still got one left to take down, I don't think that they speak to who we are as a community. So, I'd want to make sure that we're leveraging, philanthropic efforts or, ways that we can actually fund, I think, what could be an incredible tourism and economic development driver for the city of Richmond. Because to me, people are going to come to see what is the new Richmond, what is the new ideas that we elevate in our community. So I would look forward to working with artists and our neighbors to achieve that.
all right.
Final question from over here. Why are you the person for this job?
I grew up in Hanover County. I've lived in Richmond ever since going to school at VCU. I was the first to graduate from college from my family. And I love this city. I've worked in progressive policymaking and organizing roles to advance, healthcare access and worker rights, making sure that people have access to our democracy with stronger voting rights. I've always been fighting to advance the lives of working people. And right now, we don't have that kind of leadership in City Hall. We have an administration that's been cozy with corporate interests, putting their ideas and their development proposals ahead of our interests. That's not the kind of leadership we need. We need someone like me that's going to build teams and coalitions to make progress for our communities, that's always going to put people first in our community and our policymaking. And when times get tough, still hold true to your values, but be honest about what you can do to move the city forward. That's the mayor that I'll be, and I look forward to earning folks' support by November 3rd.
All right, thank you so much, Alexsis Rodgers.
Thank you, Bill.
Candidate for mayor. Candace, thank you for fielding all the Facebook
Absolutely.
questions. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
And that will conclude our mayoral candidates for Richmond. All 5 now have done this Facebook Live with us, so you can search Facebook for all the other versions. So thank you and have a great night.